The oncologist's words struck me like a freight train. Without immediate treatment, you have 3 months to live, Mrs. Johnson. I headed straight to my son's office that same afternoon, medical papers gripped in my trembling hands. When he glanced up from his computer screen and noticed the look on my face, I knew he realized this wasn't a casual visit. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The fluorescent lights in Dr. Smith's office had been too harsh, making everything seem unreal as she explained how the aggressive cancer had already spread to my lymph nodes. "We need to begin treatment right away," she'd said, her tone professional yet compassionate. "The specialized therapy costs $85,000, but it's your best chance at overcoming this." I'd sat there in that sterile room, reflecting on how I'd raised my son Michael alone after his father left us when he was 12, working double shifts as a hospital administrator to help him through law school. Now at 62, I needed him more than ever. Michael's law office was on the top floor of a sleek downtown building, all glass and chrome with pricey furniture that screamed achievement. His secretary announced me with barely hidden surprise, since I never dropped by without notice. When I stepped into his corner office, he was going over documents, his dark hair neatly styled, dressed in a suit that likely cost more than my monthly mortgage. "Mom, what's wrong?" He could sense the panic in my face right away. I set the medical reports on his mahogany desk. "I have cancer, Michael. Aggressive lymphoma. Without treatment, I have 3 months." The color faded from his face as he skimmed the papers. "Oh no, Mom, I'm so sorry." He stood and walked around the desk to hug me. For a moment, I felt the comfort of having my child care for me. "The treatment isn't covered by insurance," I went on, my voice steadier. "It's experimental, but it's my only hope. $85,000. Michael returned to his chair, his businessman demeanor returning. "That's a huge amount, Mom." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. "I know it is, but Michael, I'm pleading for my life." He leaned back, fingers steepled, the same gesture I recalled from when he was a kid, trying to dodge trouble. "Let me discuss it with Emily. We'll see what we can figure out." Emily, his wife of 3 years who'd never warmed to me much, the one who'd persuaded him to relocate across town to avoid family duties too often. That should have been my first clue. But hope blinds you to warning signs, right? I hugged him goodbye, thinking, surely my only child wouldn't let me die over money. After all, I'd given up everything for him. Surely that mattered. I was about to find out just how much it did. 3 days later, Michael called instead of stopping by, which should have told me all I needed to know. His voice sounded rehearsed, like he was following a script Emily had prepared. "Mom, we've been discussing your situation." "Our situation," I corrected softly. "Michael, this is about your mother's life." The silence dragged on awkwardly before he cleared his throat. "Right, of course. It's just that $85,000 is our whole emergency savings. Emily's concerned about what might happen if we face our own medical crisis." I gazed out my kitchen window at the garden I'd nurtured for 15 years, wondering if I'd survive to see another spring. "Michael, I'm not asking you to go into debt. I know you have the funds." He'd just made partner at his firm, and Emily worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep. They weren't struggling financially. "It's not that straightforward, Mom. We have responsibilities, commitments, the house payment, Emily's student loans. We're planning to start a family." Each excuse felt like a tiny stab to my heart. "I raised you alone after your father left us with nothing," I said quietly. "I held 2 jobs to get you through law school. I never asked for repayment." "That was your choice," he replied. And I could hear Emily's influence in those chilly words. "You chose to have a child. You chose to support me. I didn't request any of that." The phone almost slipped from my grasp. This stranger's voice couldn't belong to my son, the boy I'd soothed through nightmares, cheered at every baseball game, celebrated with at his law school graduation. "Michael, I'm begging for my life. $85,000 to survive." My voice broke despite my effort to stay composed. "I'll find another solution," he said hastily, as if that fixed it all. "There are programs, charity options, payment plans. You don't need to burden us with this." That's what I'd become to my own child, a burden. After hanging up, I sat in my empty house and understood that something fundamental had changed. The son I'd raised, the man I'd been so proud of, no longer existed. Or perhaps he'd never truly been there, and I'd been cherishing an illusion. I spent the next 2 days exploring every financial avenue, contacting charity groups, looking into medical loans with sky-high interest. Every path led to dead ends or wait lists too long for the time I lacked. Then Emily posted the invite on Facebook and everything became painfully clear. You're cordially invited to celebrate Emily Johnson's 30th birthday extravaganza. The Facebook invite was stylish, printed on what appeared to be pricey cardstock, photographed against a backdrop of white roses. Join us for an unforgettable evening at the Grand Hotel Ballroom featuring dinner, dancing, and surprises. I read it 3 times before the numbers at the bottom sank in. Black tie required. Cost per couple, $300. I scrolled through the comments, seeing friends and colleagues RSVP eagerly. Can't wait. Going to be fantastic. Emily deserves the best. My hands shook as I calculated in my head. If they charged guests $300 per couple and I spotted 47 confirmed attendees so far, that meant... I grabbed a calculator to confirm. Over $14,000 just from ticket sales for a birthday bash. But that was only the start. I clicked through Emily's Instagram stories from the planning, and each post stung like another blow. The custom floral arrangements, $15,000. The 5-course meal from the city's top caterer, $30,000. The live band she'd brought in from Austin, $25,000. The designer dress she'd purchased for the event, $8,000. I screenshotted it all, my cancer-weakened hands trembling with fury. When I totaled it up, the sum made me physically sick. $230,000 for one night for one woman's birthday, while I faced death because I couldn't afford $85,000 for treatment. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so crushing. Michael, who couldn't scrape together $85,000 to save his mother's life, had somehow managed $230,000 for his wife's party lasting just 6 hours. I called him that evening, my voice carefully measured. Michael, I saw Emily's party invite. It looks beautiful. A pause. Oh yeah, it's going to be great. Emily's been planning it for months. It must be pricey, I said casually. The Grand Hotel, the catering, all those details. Well, you know Emily, she likes everything perfect. He sounded uneasy, likely sensing where this was going. How much is it costing, Michael? The silence lasted so long I thought he'd disconnected. Mom, that's not really your concern. Humor me. I'm curious what perfection costs these days. Another pause. It's a special occasion. Emily only turns 30 once. Michael, my voice sharpened. How much? About $200,000, he muttered. More or less. The confirmation struck me like a blow, even though I'd already calculated it. $200,000 for a birthday party, but you can't find $85,000 to save my life. Those are totally different situations. Mom, the party is an investment in our social circle, our business connections, an investment. My son was labeling his wife's birthday as an investment while his mother confronted death. I see, I said softly. I'm glad I grasp your priorities now. After hanging up, I sat in the dimness of my living room and made a choice that would alter everything. If Michael thought I'd fade away quietly and conveniently, he was mistaken. I took out a mortgage on my house the next morning. 50 years of marriage, 40 in the same home, and I signed the papers, risking it all for a shot at survival. The bank officer, a kind woman named Mrs. Brown, seemed bothered by my haste. Mrs. Johnson, are you certain about this? At your age, a reverse mortgage might suit better. I need the funds immediately, I told her firmly. All of it. She handled the paperwork efficiently. But I noticed her concerned glances. When I left with a certified check for $92,000, my hands were steady for the first time in weeks. The oncology billing office accepted my payment without issue. Dr. Smith scheduled my first treatment for the following Monday. I'm proud of you for battling this, Mrs. Johnson, she said, checking my chart. This treatment has a 73% success rate. Those are solid odds. Solid odds paid for with everything I owned. But as I drove home, I felt something I hadn't since my diagnosis. Hope. Perhaps I would survive. Maybe I'd see another Christmas, another spring in my garden, another year of life that Michael had been ready to forfeit. That weekend, social media buzzed with photos from Emily's birthday extravaganza. I browsed hundreds of images. Emily in her $8,000 gown, the intricate ice sculpture centerpieces, the custom cake modeled after their house, with edible landscaping. Michael looked dashing and proud in his tuxedo, his arm around his glowing wife. In one photo, he was toasting, champagne glass raised, a wide smile on his face. The caption read, My husband's speech about how nothing is too good for the woman he loves brought tears to everyone's eyes. Nothing too good for the woman he loves. I screenshotted that photo and caption, adding it to my evidence pile. Proof of what my life was worth to my son, less than his wife's birthday. Chemotherapy started on Monday. The sessions were grueling, leaving me nauseous and drained, but I pushed through with fierce resolve. Each one cost thousands. Funds that had once secured my home, my future, my peace, but I was alive. Every day I awoke was a day Michael hadn't anticipated. A day he'd sacrificed for his wife's social media highlights. During recovery between treatments, I started planning. If I beat this cancer, and the odds favored it, I had tough choices about my bond with my son, including whether to keep one at all. 6 months later, Dr. Smith gave me the news I'd prayed for. Complete remission. The cancer was gone, wiped out by the treatment I'd nearly perished to afford. I sat in her office, healthy and cancer-free, contemplating the son who'd never called to check on my progress. Never visited during chemo. Never acknowledged his mother had fought alone. "You beat the odds, Mrs. Johnson," Dr. Smith said, warmth in her smile. "How do you feel?" Grateful, angry, relieved, devastated. But mostly, I feel liberated. Liberated from the myth that family meant unconditional love. Liberated from the duty to uphold ties with those who saw me as disposable. "I feel like I have a fresh start," I told her, "and I plan to use it wisely." First, I sold my house. The mortgage for treatment left little equity. But the sale provided enough to restart elsewhere, somewhere Michael wouldn't search. I picked Tucson, Arizona for its warm, dry weather good for my recovering health, and because it was 1,500 miles from my past. I rented a modest apartment in a retirement community. Nothing lavish, but it was mine and paid for. Second, I vanished. I changed my number, shut down social media, and left no trail. When Michael's secretary called my old number, she'd hear it was disconnected. When he passed my old house, he'd see new people there. For the first time in adulthood, I was invisible to those meant to care. It was scary and freeing equally. My first month in Tucson, I slept in, read books I'd neglected, and hiked desert paths near my new place. Gradually, I befriended other residents. Linda, a retired teacher whose husband passed 2 years ago. Robert, a former accountant who'd divorced after his wife stole from their business. Karen, whose kids moved to Europe and rarely contacted her. We were a group of the abandoned, the overlooked, the cast aside, yet we built something wonderful. In my second month, Robert mentioned needing help with bookkeeping for his small investment firm. "I can't pay much," he said over coffee in the community lounge, "but it's real work." I'd always handled numbers well, and I needed mental stimulation. What began as part-time bookkeeping grew into investment advice, then managing portfolios for others. Turns out when you're not stressing over impressing people or family ties, you can take smart risks. Wise risks, as it happened, with money truly mine to invest. By month 6, I earned more than in my old life, and Michael had no clue I was alive, much less flourishing. 1 year after vanishing, I was wealthier than I'd imagined. The portfolio I'd built for myself and clients had grown 300% from savvy bets on emerging tech stocks and a smart wager on renewable energy firms. I'd launched a small financial consulting business, guiding other seniors on retirement investments and estate planning. Referrals brought clients from across Tucson, and I was fully booked with folks seeking counsel from someone who knew late-life restarts. My tiny apartment gave way to a cozy house in a nice neighborhood, with a garden for the veggies I'd missed. I had a new car, solid friends, and a growing savings that showed I was far from the helpless burden Michael had viewed me as. But the deepest change was inside. The woman who'd pleaded with her son for survival was replaced by someone tougher, wiser, and fully independent. I'd learned to trust my own instincts, value my own worth, and never let anyone decide my fate again. My cancer stayed in remission, my health was strong, and my future was mine alone. I'd created a life Michael couldn't reach, control, or even know about. Each morning, I awoke thankful for the second chance I'd claimed, the one he'd refused. Late at night, I'd sometimes ponder if he thought of me. Did he assume I'd passed quietly as he'd hoped? Did guilt nag him for denying help? Did he even recall having a mother? But those thoughts faded. I was too occupied living the life I'd preserved to dwell on the son who'd let me perish. Some bridges, once burned, can't be mended, and some bonds once seen clearly aren't worth repairing. I was about to learn Michael had grasped that too, but from his perspective. 6 years after I disappeared from Michael's world, He located me through the one thing I couldn't conceal: success. My financial consulting firm featured in Tucson Business Weekly with a photo of me outside my downtown office. The piece dubbed me the investment whisperer and described how I'd turned struggling retirees into bold investors. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my secretary, Susan, buzzed. "Mrs. Johnson, there's a man claiming to be your son. No appointment, but he's very persistent." My coffee cup halted midway to my lips. After 6 years of quiet, Michael had found me. "Does he seem desperate?" I asked, amazed at my steady voice. Susan hesitated. "Yes, ma'am. He looks like he's been through trouble." "Perfect. Send him in." I squared my shoulders and braced to face the stranger who was once my son. Michael stepped into my office, and I hardly recognized him. The confident lawyer in pricey suits had been swapped for a gaunt man in rumpled clothes that sagged on his thin frame. His hair was longer, disheveled, and fresh lines around his eyes hinted at sleepless nights and overwhelming stress. "Hello, Michael." I didn't rise, didn't offer him a chair. I just waited. He lingered in the doorway, gazing at me like I was a specter. "Mom, goodness, we all thought you were gone." I arched an eyebrow. "How theatrical." "I'm very much here, as you can see." He approached my desk, his eyes scanning the lavish furniture, the framed accolades on the walls, the vista of downtown Tucson through floor-to-ceiling windows. This is remarkable." "You look fantastic, healthy, thriving, cancer-free for 5.5 years, I stated flatly. "The treatment succeeded perfectly. Of course you wouldn't know that since you never reached out to inquire." His face fell, and for a moment he resembled the 12-year-old boy who used to slip into my bed during storms. "Mom, I'm so sorry." I was mistaken. I was self-centered. You were precisely who you are," I cut in. "Nothing more, nothing less. The real question is, what do you need now?" Michael slumped into the chair opposite my desk, uninvited. "I need your assistance," he murmured. And there it lay, the true motive for his appearance. Not regret, not affection, not a wish to mend. He required something from me once more. "Assistance with what, Michael?" My tone could have chilled ice. "Everything's vanished, Mom. The home, the vehicle, the firm, everything. Emily drained me and vanished with her fitness coach." He chuckled bitterly. "Turns out she'd been scheming it for 2 years. Shifted all our funds overseas, persuaded me to transfer everything into her name for tax benefits." I was so blindly enamored. I signed whatever she presented. I absorbed Michael's account of financial collapse with the same detachment I'd show reviewing a dull quarterly statement. Emily had methodically ruined him. Employing the same precise calculation she'd used for her lavish birthday bashes, she convinced me to remortgage the house to invest in her friend's tech venture. Michael went on, his voice empty with humiliation. "She claimed we'd double our investment in 6 months. The business was non-existent. All fabricated papers, phony sites, staged investor pitches." "How much did you forfeit?" I inquired, though I suspected the figure. "Everything. $2 million. Our total assets plus loans against future income." He lifted his gaze with bloodshot eyes. "Mom, I'm staring down bankruptcy, legal charges. The state bar is scrutinizing my license. $2 million ours." I did swift mental calculations, recalling the media buzz about Emily's birthday event 6 years back. If they'd splashed that much then, Michael's practice had been more lucrative than I'd grasped. "The fitness coach she departed with?" I remarked casually. "How long had that affair lasted?" Michael's hands balled into fists. "At least 3 years, perhaps more. Jake Thompson, the fellow who aided in her birthday planning. They were likely mocking me the entire time, scheming this while I footed the bill for ice carvings and bespoke floral designs. The irony was so flawless it bordered on poetic. Emily had leveraged Michael's funds, the very money he'd insisted he couldn't spare for his mother's survival, to bankroll her romance and plot her getaway. "Where is she presently?" I asked. "Florida, we believe. No extradition pact. She funneled everything into offshore entities there." Michael leaned in urgently. "Mom, I realize I have no right to plead, but I'm sinking. The attorneys demand $50,000 just to initiate a defense. I don't have $50 to my name. $50,000. Less than the price of my cancer care, which he'd denied. The universal fairness of it was nearly too exquisite to fully savor." "And you recalled me," I mused. "After 6 years of quiet, you located me." "Because you require funds." "I erred," he said, tears welling. "The gravest error of my existence. I ought to have aided you." Should have secured the money somehow. I was frightened, bewildered, heeding Emily over my own conscience. You selected your spouse over your mother, I stated plainly. Individuals make decisions, Michael. They endure the fallout. He was sobbing openly now, the accomplished lawyer veneer utterly stripped. I forfeited it all, Mom. My union, my vocation, my standing, my wealth, everything. Not everything, I corrected. You retain your existence. I nearly lacked that privilege. Michael glanced up sharply, finally grasping my point. The cancer therapy succeeded. You endured. I endured by rescuing myself. I mortgaged my home, funded my own care, and conquered cancer without aid from my devoted son. You could have lost me permanently, he whispered. You did lose me, I responded. 6 years ago, when you prioritized $85,000 over your mother's survival. The person here now is entirely different. Michael pleaded for the ensuing hour, imploring, vowing transformation, atonement for his treachery 6 years prior. I observed with the impartial curiosity of viewing a somewhat engaging film. When he finally wore himself out, I lifted my phone. Susan, please fetch the Thompson dossier. Michael appeared puzzled. Thompson, Jake Thompson? Emily's fitness coach turned accomplice. You didn't imagine I'd permit the man who aided in dismantling my son to operate in my city without investigation, did you? Susan entered with a hefty folder which I opened deliberately. Let's examine what Mr. Thompson has been involved in since fleeing to Florida with your wife. Michael leaned forward, eager for any details on the man who'd stolen his world. Intriguing tale, really. Jake and Emily endured about 6 months before she fleeced him too. Evidently, she's impartial in her deceptions. She claimed his share of your funds and vanished to Texas. Jake returned to the States roughly 2 years ago, utterly destitute. Michael's expression cycled through emotions, landing on grim contentment. Serves him right. I hope they both suffer. Well, Jake has certainly been battling, but here's the compelling aspect, I proceeded, extracting a photo. He's been employed as a fitness coach here in Tucson at the gym 3 blocks from my office. The color fled Michael's face. You were aware? You knew he was here and withheld it? Why would I disclose anything to you, Michael? We haven't communicated in 6 years. As far as I knew, you presumed I was deceased. I set the photo down. But since you're here, you might appreciate knowing what else I've uncovered. I retrieved another document laden with legal jargon. Jake has been quite forthcoming about his time with Emily. He's prepared to testify regarding her financial misdeeds in exchange for immunity. Matters involving falsified records, identity fraud, wire deception across borders. Michael seized the document with trembling hands. This could exonerate me if I can demonstrate Emily manipulated me, that I was a casualty too. It could, I concurred. The federal prosecutor on your case is especially keen on Jake's account. Apparently, Emily exploited several other men similarly. You're part of a trend. Hope ignited in Michael's eyes for the first time since entering. Mom, how did you obtain this data? How did you even know to investigate? I smiled, not entirely warmly. Michael, I established a multi-million-dollar investment enterprise from scratch in 6 years. Did you believe I achieved that without mastering information gathering? Multi-million? His voice was a faint whisper. I gestured around my office. The company is valued at $4.2 million. My personal holdings at another $3.8 million, Michael. Constructed from the remnants of the life you and Emily contributed to ruining. He gazed at me as if seeing me anew. You're wealthy. Truly wealthy. I'm accomplished, I corrected. I'm autonomous. I'm answerable to no one, and no one can seize what I've created. It's an empowering sensation. Michael fell silent for a prolonged moment, assimilating the details about Jake, Emily's other targets. You're going to assist me? I shut the folder and regarded my son with eyes that had grown resolute. I'm offering you a choice, Michael. The identical choice you presented me 6 years ago. Here's your choice, I declared, my voice firm as stone. I possess sufficient proof and context to fully vindicate you. Jake Thompson is ready to testify. I know the federal prosecutor personally, and I have records substantiating Emily's organized deceit. I can erase your legal woes with a single call. Michael's breath accelerated. What do you require in exchange? I desire you to grasp the sensation of pleading for your existence. I opened my desk drawer and withdrew a check already drafted to him. $50,000, sufficient for your legal defense and to help you recover. His eyes locked on the check like a drowning person spotting a lifeline. But there's a stipulation, I continued. You must request it precisely as I did 6 years ago. You must kneel in this office and implore your mother to preserve your life. The silence extended between us, laden with years of pain and disloyalty. Michael stared at the check, then at me, comprehension finally emerging. You wish me to degrade myself? I wish you to endure what you inflicted on me, I replied simply. The desperation, the powerlessness, the realization that your destiny hinges on another's compassion. Michael's jaw tensed as he wrestled with his ego. And if I decline, you can depart empty-handed and isolated, just as you abandoned me. I raised the Jake dossier. This intel perishes with me. The prosecutor never gains her key witness. You confront the accusations solo. For an instant, I believed he might reject it. The former Michael, the haughty attorney who'd prized his wife's birthday over his mother's survival, would have stormed out in fury. But this shattered individual before me was discovering true despair. Gradually, Michael descended from his chair to his knees beside my desk. His voice broke as he spoke. Please, Mom, I'm imploring you. Preserve my life. Tears flowed as he persisted. I erred 6 years ago. I was self-absorbed and harsh, and I abandoned you when you most required me. Please don't permit me to ruin myself as I nearly allowed you to perish. I gazed down at my son, kneeling on the plush carpet of my corner office, and experienced something unforeseen. Not triumph, but sorrow. This wasn't the conquest I'd envisioned. It was merely tragedy echoing in a new tone. Rise, Michael. He returned to his chair, dabbing his eyes. I passed him the check and the Thompson dossier. Your legal issues will resolve within the month. Jake's account will fully acquit you. Why? He whispered. After all I inflicted on you, why aid me? I reclined in my chair, abruptly sensing every bit of my 68 years. Because I discovered something about myself while battling cancer in solitude. I discovered I'm tougher than I realized. But I also learned I don't wish to morph into someone who forsakes kin in distress. Michael gripped the check, fresh tears forming. I don't merit this. I don't merit you. No, I agreed. You don't, but that's not my motivation. 6 months later, Michael's charges were dismissed. Jake Thompson's testimony unveiled Emily's full web of financial deceit, and Michael was formally deemed a casualty rather than an accomplice. The state bar reinstated his license, and he'd launched a modest practice focusing on elder law and fraud restitution. He now calls every Sunday, not seeking anything, just touching base. The dialogues remain tentative, cautious, but authentic in a manner our bond never was. We are both altered individuals now, molded by loss and treachery and the stern realization that affection isn't boundless. I have something for you, Michael mentioned during one call. I've been preparing it for months. The following week, he traveled to Tucson with a cashier's check for $85,000. It's inadequate, he stated, presenting it in my office. It'll never compensate for my actions. But it's precisely what I should have provided 6 years ago with interest. I examined the check, then set it aside. Michael, I no longer require your funds. I know, but I must offer it. Not because you need it, but because I must demonstrate to myself that I'm not the person who permitted his mother to confront cancer unaided. We conversed for hours that day. Truly conversed for the first time since his youth. He shared his struggles with depression after Emily's departure, the counseling he'd begun, the gradual rebuilding of his self-esteem. I described my enterprise, my companions in Tucson, the existence I'd forged from zero. I'm proud of you, he remarked as he departed. I know I lack the entitlement, but I'm proud of the woman you've evolved into. I'm proud of the man you're evolving into, I responded. Not the man you were, but the one you're electing to become. As I observed his cab vanish into Tucson traffic, I pondered the peculiar path that led us here. 6 years prior, I'd confronted death in isolation because my son favored finances over my survival. Now he'd forfeited everything and uncovered what truly counts. Not riches or prestige or social ties, but the individuals who support you when all collapses. I'd rescued myself, amassed a fortune, and demonstrated I needed no one's salvation. Yet ultimately, the most precious gain wasn't wealth or achievement or freedom. It was the insight that I was resilient enough to pardon without oblivion, to assist without indulgence, and to cherish without relinquishing my dignity. Some teachings demand total sacrifice to acquire. Michael had mastered his. And in imparting it to him, I'd grasped something too, that occasionally the mightiest triumph isn't vanquishing foes, but exemplifying a superior path to humanity. Existence had imparted a rigorous lesson to him. I'd instilled a more arduous one. But in conclusion, we'd both absorbed the most challenging lesson. That kinship isn't about lineage or duty, but about electing to uphold one another, even at the expense of all you possess. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.